Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of Tocsin Tales from the Bunker. Thank you all very, very much for joining in. The first few episodes have been received really, really well, and thank you for all the positive feedback that I've been getting from them. Tonight's guest is my first guest who was a serving member of the Royal Observer Corps. Who served on one of the nuclear monitoring posts during the Cold War. And I'm really pleased that he said yes. He is waiting in the wings, ready to come on. And I will do my split screen. I will unmute his microphone and I will bring him in. David Shaw, welcome.
Good evening, Al.
Thank you very, very much for joining. Real pleasure to have you on. Obviously, when I first started this, I wanted to do it in a way that I was interviewing in both enthusiasts and former members of the Royal Observer Corps and Civil Defence. And you sort of fall into both categories here, that you are both a former Royal Observer Corps member and also an enthusiast who has restored a post. I think we'll sort of start from the very beginning. When did you first hear about the Royal Observer Corps, and what was your then reasons for joining, and why did you join a monitoring post then rather than, say, for instance, going to a group headquarters?
Well, first of all, let me say I'm not a public speaker, so I'll probably end up scratching my nose and pushing my glasses up and things. And,
You're all right.
Even though I'm not a public speaker, I am a genuine Cold War artifact, a relic even. Probably a relic. Should be dug up somewhere. Yeah. You've met my ex-chief observer, David Atkinson, otherwise known as Akka.
I have.
He used to work at the dairy at Appleby emptying milk tankers and insulting the drivers who worked there and anyone else. And I used to go up and see him occasionally. And one day, the storeman walked past, bloke I knew because his son went to school with me. And he said, "What are you two doing tonight?" And nothing on. It was the pub, as usual in those days. So he says, "Right, well, I've got a job for you two fat so-and-sos. If you can fit down this hole, I can give you a job." Well, didn't say any more than that. It intrigued us. And he said, "I see you're at 7:30 at the top of Barramoor, which is just outside Appleby."
Mm-hmm.
So at 7:30 we turned up, and there was a couple of cars which parked on the roadside, but nothing else to see. Went through a gate, and there was this hatch, and we hollered down the hatch. Tom came up. He says, "Right, get yourselves down here." So went down. Not a clue what it was, and he started to explain things. And he was the chief observer, and one of the milk tanker drivers there was the leading observer, and one or two of the others I knew. One of them I'd gone to school with his daughter, Carol, and knew everybody. It was,
So that was your first. So you had you even ever heard of the Royal Observer Corps before that?
Not a thing.
Right.
A thing.
Okay, that's interesting.
So they told us a bit about what it was all about, and sort of hooked. Didn't know anything that there was controls or whatever. The next thing we had to come again the following week, and when we got there the following week, Jack Bell, who was the group officer, really nice bloke, was there and asked us, if we were interested and bits and pieces, and then not long after we were enrolled.
And what was the process then behind that? I mean, obviously you would have had to have signed the Official Secrets Act. Did you have to do an exam? Was there a whole enrollment process, or was it a simple case of turning up, saying you were going to do the job, and then going to the training evenings then after that?
Yeah, you turned up. You went to the training evenings, and there was a preliminary sort of test. You had to know what the ground zero indicator was and be able to change the papers and bits and pieces like that. Nothing too onerous, but it was just a checklist that the group officer had to tick off to make sure you knew the basics, basically.
Yeah. And what year was that?
Was officially enrolled the 2nd of July 1984.
Okay, so you've effectively joined then as the modernization process was happening then with the
Yeah.
equipment.
Yeah. The Let me see, the 15th of October, I think it was 85. Um, I was promoted to leading observer. Tom, who was the chief, was retiring because he was that age.
Hmm.
Um, and he sort of said to Aka, do you want to take my job? I can talk you through it all at work and show you everything works. So Aka agreed to that. And the lad who was leading said, well, if Tom's standing down, I'll stand down as well.
Okay.
If you want to be leading observer, he says, you know everything, you're teaching everybody everything anyway.
Yeah, and as I said,
Now,
for the people who didn't know, the leading observer then that was the who took all the training evenings. He was the post training instructor.
post instructor, yeah, yeah. Um,
Okay.
so I jumped into that role. And as you say, it was the time when the equipment was changing. Because I remember doing exercises with the old Clockwork FSM trainer,
Hmm.
um, and putting batteries in the old FSM and such. But then we got the new PDR M82 equipment. And the first thing that happened was our group officer came around one day and said, it's cluster meeting next week, um, which we held that one in the public hall at Appleby
Hmm.
in the supper room. So, quite a few posts in the area come round. And he handed me this grey plastic case with PDR M82F in. He said, there you go. There's a photocopy of the section of the manual that will be coming out. Have a read of that, and you can teach everybody about it next week. So, yeah, that went down reasonably well. I think it even got a mention in the 22 group newsletter of the day.
Right. Okay. Okay. So I mean, it's a I try to envisage why people would have joined. I mean, I'm guessing at the time where when you joined, the Cold War was at a reasonably high level at that point. There were issues between East and West,
Oh
and
yeah,
it wasn't really a case of if there was going to be a nuclear war, it was when there was going to be a nuclear war. So, what was, what were you thinking in your head when you first saw this infrastructure, and was there anything in the back of your mind that says this isn't probably a good idea to be taking on this job, or were you totally solely, this will definitely help in some way if there is a nuclear war in the UK?
that's I give talks to WIs and Rotary and things like that. That's probably one of the most common questions I'm asked,
Hmm.
and the answer I give might sound stupid. Um, it gets a few puzzled looks, and the reason I say it is I was being selfish. Not because I thought I'd survive if I was in a post, because I realised pretty soon that we were, well, as we were told at camp one year, we were classified by the MOD as disposable monitoring equipment.
Right.
Not
Okay.
not personnel, we were disposable monitoring equipment. Um, but my thinking was, if we do our jobs right and pass the information on to group control and they do their jobs right, hopefully somewhere along the line, someone will look after my family, my
Yes.
parents, my brother. Um, and people say, oh, it's just send them away from fallout. But it wasn't just send them away from fallout. You've got to think, if there was fallout, it would affect crops. It would affect meat supplies, cattle in the field, pigs. It would affect water supplies, everything like that. This reservoir is safe, this reservoir isn't safe,
Yeah.
and so on. And hopefully the information we provide would see my family okay, even if I wasn't. And that was my thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I had from the observers I have spoken to over the years, there was the ex chief observer of Bambridge Post, and he had said on one of his first nights, the at the time the chief observer collected him from his house, and he kissed his wife and kids goodbye, and he got into the car and they drove down the road, and there were total silence as they drove down the road. And after 5 or 6 minutes, the chief observer turned to him and he said, do you always kiss your wife and kids like that when you leave the house? Make a big deal about leaving? And he said, well, yeah, obviously I've got to get myself in the frame of mind that that could be the last time I ever see my wife and kids. And I'm leaving them to go to this monitoring post, and there could be a nuclear war, and I'll never see them again. And less than a week later, the chief observer resigned his post because he'd never thought about it. He'd never thought about it. And I'm amazed. I mean, I don't know. I think that was the biggest worry that they had, was how many observers would turn up for their duty. When the balloon obviously went up and when the call went out, and I think it would have been quite a high number, because any of the observers I've spoken to, yourself as well, were very professional. And yes, you played hard, but you worked extremely hard. And it's been a pleasure to be in the company with, say, for instance, group reunions, where I have seen you and the camaraderie that still exists between you all, and it just shows what a tight knit group you were. That was it. We were a family.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, I don't know whether others look at it the same way, but you'll have lost family members. And the wrench that is, well, September 91, when the car was stood down, it was like losing 10,000 members of your family all at once.
Yeah.
And I still get emotional about it. It was one hell of a day, and it's left its mark. But it's great that some of us are still in contact.
How often would you have visited group headquarters then as a leading observer?
Not very often, in general, although hadn't long been in the car, and there was an exercise, and got talking to the plotter, a female plotter. Found out her name was Fiona.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, why don't you come through to control, see what we do on a meeting here, and we can go out for a drink. So me and Akka went through and met Fiona and her friend Janine. That was in 84. Had a drink and kept in touch. Met Janine's husband-to-be and so on. Met Fiona's family. And every year now, even the three of us go away on holiday, me and Fiona and Janine, for a long weekend, and take our other halves with us. Still keep in touch.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. It's that is the one thing that gets me every time I see all of you together. That even though you were all from different groups, meeting up at the sort of the summer training camps, you just seem to, as you said, become one big family. And I mean, I have a couple of photographs here. I have this one of you underneath the Vulcan there. What whereabouts is that? Is that 607?
That's 607 at Waddington in 1987.
And for anybody who doesn't know, 607 was on the Black Buck mission during the Falklands War that bombed the airport at Port Stanley. So it's a very, very famous aircraft.
Yeah. The chap in the middle at the back, the officer, who was in charge of our course, that was Methods of Instruction Advanced course. And that was John Sharp, who is chairman of ROCA today.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
And the gentleman on the right-hand end, as you look, with the chip bag hat on, and the lady in front of me met at that camp and subsequently got married. And I believe Cheryl's in touch with them.
Oh, fantastic! And there's you with your lovely moustache there as well.
Oh dear, yeah, the 80s porn star moustache.
So I've got another camp photo. I assume this is camp, is it?
Yeah, it was the last night of camp. The last night of camp always had a formal evening, and the sort of joining instructions said shirt, tie, black shoes. There was no mention at all of trousers.
Oh, that is brilliant.
Yeah, so on, on the left, you've got Bob Hewitt from One Group Maidstone, who I'm hoping to see this month, going down south this month for a few days. Then Sue Andrews, I think her name was, from uh, 16 or 17 group. 17, I think.
Okay. I mean,
That's true.
what sort of things did you? I mean, without going into too much detail, obviously judging by those shorts, I think we could go into a lot of detail. What was the training camps all about? I mean, I take it there were set out courses throughout the day, and then you were sort of free to your own devices at night.
Yeah, basically that. Most nights ended up in the pub, or I don't know why, for some reason, other than Leeming, which was our first camp, and thereby hangs a tale. Um, Leeming, we were in the H blocks in the billets. And then Newcastle the following year, we were in the Student Hall of Residence.
I think there
But
was a big fuss kicked up about that, wasn't there?
oh yeah, there was no sort of camp atmosphere at all. Um, but 87 onwards, we'd turn up at a camp, and the married quarters, they would just strip everything out of married quarters and turn every room into a bedroom, other than the bathroom, of course.
Okay.
And somebody would get put in charge of a house. And I don't know why, but I was always put in charge of a house. So the first thing that would happen is the word would get around that, oh, Boots has got a house, it's party time. So every night it would be party at my house. Not always when I was there. As one night at Harry of Wotton proved. But I think you might come to that later.
Yes, we will. I have heard that story from you before, and I think it is good enough for me to hear again. Uh, yes, it's a very very good story. So yeah, everyone is going to be in for a treat to hear that story. Right. Well, we'll go back then to the monitoring posts. So, for instance, now you served on Appleby Post,
Yeah.
which sadly has long since been demolished. Now, I have an internal photograph of you at Appleby, and then I have an external photograph of you at Bransby Post, and that's in York, correct?
That's yeah, York Group. Yeah, near Acomb.
Yeah, and
Near,
this post was restored and open as a museum. I think back when I first started sort of restoring Portadown, it was open, and sadly now I think it was heritage listed, if I remember correctly,
yeah,
without the landowner's permission, and the landowner got slightly annoyed about that, and he kicked the restorer out.
yeah, I believe so. One thing I should point out on this picture, I don't know how clear it is for people. The chap second left, it looks as though there's a mark on the photograph above his head. It's actually a pheasant feather that he stuck in his beret, and that is Fred, or was Fred Hemingway, who was a seaborne observer, and I
Wow.
met at that camp, and we became very good friends right through until he died. An absolutely lovely bloke.
And for people who don't know, then obviously the seaborne observers were observers during the Second World War, who were basically seconded into the Royal Navy as observers on merchant ships, and the American and the Allied ships, to make sure that there was no friendly fire incidents. And because of that, then they were allowed to wear these seaborne patches then on their uniform, for Operation Overlord and D-Day. And yeah, I'd say, are there any seaborne observers still alive?
I'm not sure. Last I heard, there was about 3, but that's about a year ago. So I'm not sure. If there are, it's very, very limited numbers.
There's quite a lot of people asking the question: one, do you still have those pair of shorts? And two, Harold Archer asked. He says, "Ask David if he remembers the gift of the pint from the Commandant ROC for breakfast." And if I remember rightly, that's the end to the story you're going to tell later, isn't it?
It's the end to one story, a pretty infamous story that, yeah, even.
Which one would you like to tell? Would you like to tell both, or would you like to choose between one or the other?
It's your show, Al. You decide.
If the infamous one is the one of you standing outside and being spotted, I think everyone would really love to hear that one. If you don't want to tell it, you don't have to. But I think it's a very, very funny story.
That the one about the return from the pub?
The one from the return to the pub is very funny. The one you told me about, I think it involves you maybe climbing out a window.
Oh, yes. We had a chief and leading observer course at the Windermere Hydro Hotel. And myself and my chief, David Atkinson, aka Acker, we were put in a room on the top floor. And along the roof of the hotel were flags. And we just happened to be under the Stars and Stripes, which, yeah, that's the man on the right. It didn't go down very well. At the time, there was a bit of anti-American feeling. I don't know why. But about 3 o'clock in the morning, we returned from the bar into our room and getting undressed, ready for bed. I was down to my boxer shorts and socks. And Acker mentioned that it was a shame that we were sleeping under the Stars and Stripes. So I grabbed another pair of socks, put them on my hands for grip, put the sash window down, and disappeared out the window over the guttering, 3 stories up. Yeah, well, I used to put up TV aerials. The heights didn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
I'm a bit more cautious these days as I'm approaching a silly age, but yeah, disappeared over the edge of the guttering and up the roof using the socks for extra traction. So I got up to the peak of the roof and took this flag down, turned it upside down and ran it back up. And, yeah, as I was sort of crabbing my way back down towards the edge of the roof, it became very, very light, and I couldn't work out where all the light was coming from. Well, on the roof of the Hydro Hotel, there's like a penthousey bit, and the penthouse was occupied by the Commandant of the Royal Observer Corps and his wife, Mike Body and Mavis. And when I looked across, Mike Body and Mavis were stood at the window in their night attire, looking out at me. Well, there's only one thing you can do when you've been observed by the Commandant ROC, and that's salute. So I snapped up a quick salute and disappeared over the edge of the roof. The next morning at breakfast, I was sat enjoying my breakfast, and the normal hubbub of a busy hotel canteen or restaurant.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it went deathly quiet, and I could see everybody was looking in one direction, but it was behind me. So I carried on eating, just, I'm ignoring what's going on here. And all of a sudden there was a tap on my shoulder, and I looked round and up, and it was good morning, sir, as Mike Body was stood behind me. And he just looked down at me. And then from behind his back, he produced a pint of bitter, plunked it down on the table beside me, and well done, and walked off. So, yeah. we got on very well after that, didn't we, Mike?
Oh, that's brilliant. That's so good.
It very soon got round Bentley Priory.
Yes, I'd say it did. Yes.
I wasn't always reverent, as you can see by the flat cap style berry with the badge pulled forward.
Yes, and what's the story then behind that? I think you'd said earlier this was taken during stand down.
That was our stand down parade at Carlisle. Yeah, the sort of hatching is the light as the sun got very low through the fencing
The mesh
of the
fence. Yeah.
But yes, I think it was Judy Ewart, one of the Scottish observers, took this picture, and because it was stand down, it was the normal irreverence, and just
Yes.
the beret badge came forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say
And
that was a pretty somber day for quite a few people.
yeah, it was strange. It was great being amongst everybody, but when we left at the end, it was a real downer. Very much like leaving camp. Leaving camp was always a tragedy.
Mm.
Um, no one would talk to each other all the way home and things.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you obviously, being a post observer and being a leading observer as well, I have a great photograph of you here doing a little sort of promotional stand. And it's probably very similar to what your setup that you have now, that you go out and give your talks. It's a very, very similar looking display.
Yeah, yeah. Without the posters, but yeah, with the equipment and things, and without the fiberglass caravan behind me.
Yeah. Do
I've
you
been
do you
on
remember when this photograph was taken?
Yeah. I did get told it was at Appleby's show, which is an agricultural show, and it was a recruiting stand we ran. We didn't
Hmm.
recruit anyone, but I think it was 87 or 88.
Okay. Okay.
It will be on my Facebook page somewhere because when I put this picture on, the bloke whose caravan it was commented what year it was.
Well, I think the next picture is going to speak for itself, and it's the photograph that you sent me of the underground portion of Appleby, and yeah, I just put the photograph up, and anybody who has been in my post will know that a monitoring post is very Spartan. It is 12-volt electricity, so you don't have any luxuries. You've no heating or anything like that there. You're relying on your batteries. So when I put this photograph up, I want you to immediately look to the left-hand side of the photograph and look what the observer is doing, and then bang, there we go. So, David, if you would like to explain then what we can see in this photograph.
Yeah, the observer looking at the camera is Joe Coward. Um, and at that point, he was warming a pie for his dinner in the microwave. On exercises, our ex group commandant and area commandant would say, you never ever went to Appleby Post on an exercise, as we were the biggest bunch of cowboys in the Corps. But if you wanted to see something done right, you went on a training night.
Oh yeah, that's a very high praise.
Yeah, well, I think so. But on an exercise, we had a 4.5 kVA Honda generator. We had a microwave, we had fan heater, we had a color TV with BSB, the old square type system.
I remember that, yeah.
And we had an Oric computer, and that was running programs, giving blast data and things, working out triangulation and such. Yeah, fan heater, table lamp, vacuum cleaner. Yeah, we looked after ourselves on exercises, but on training nights we did the job right.
And what were well, I mean, for instance, obviously we have the Intexes and we have the Warmons and things like that there. And then there was the sort of the shorter, sort of like
Yeah.
one night, on a Thursday night or something, you would do a very quick exercise over a couple of hours.
Yeah.
I mean, how many post? Yeah, that was it. Yes. How long was the sort of the weekend exercises? What were they like to actually take part in?
Intex was 24 hours. Warmon was usually 12, but Intex 24. And yeah, it was good. It gave you an idea of what you would be in for. Even though it was, like I say, it was only a day. We tried to always do as long as we could an exercise.
Was there the usual changeover of shift that you could, there was observers coming on duty and you were going off duty, or would you just stay for the full time?
We used to like staying for the full time if we could. Um, Although some of us, were still at work and things.
Hmm.
I remember one exercise, Judy Heal, who was one of the lady observers on our post, um, came after work at midnight. She worked in a care home, and there was about 3 inches of snow on the ground. So she came and she brought a sleeping bag with her, and huddled into a sleeping bag, sat at the teletalk.
It's yeah, it's from obviously my own experience of just staying the night in the post, sort of a camping, over the weekend. It certainly gets cold at night. You do need a good sleeping bag. I mean, did you ever sleep in the post on exercise, or were you always on duty?
Oh, I was always on duty. Well, I was either, on the teletalk or just sat next to whoever was on the teletalk chatting, and it passed the time away, because, 24 hours with waiting for your simulated attack, and then waiting for the fallout and things, and then just reading the FSM every 5 minutes.
Past
It
the
could
time.
drag. So you put the world to rights, and it
Yeah.
was part of that family thing, because if we'd um, been called up to respond, um, while there was a rota system going at the start, amongst the observers, as sort of tensions increased, your you wouldn't just be looking after your own family; you would be looking after the other families as well. Those that were on duty.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you got to know each the crew and their families as well. It really was quite a community sort of thing. Um,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
It's. I
You
mean,
had to be there to pull
oh, go
together.
ahead. Sorry. Pardon. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just say you had to be sort of there to pull together if ever it happened.
Yes, exactly. Because obviously, only being three of you down there, everybody had a job to do. Everyone had a role. Everyone knew their
Yeah,
job and knew their role. So yes, because it was a life and death situation, so you did have to count on people. And a question has been asked in the comments. Obviously, the gentleman in the photograph has a long service medal, and if I remember from looking at the photograph, I think he also has a rosette as well.
yeah.
So, was it normal for an observer to have a long service medal with a rosette and not be either a leading observer or a chief observer?
There was quite a few in 22 group that were just observers.
And they were happy enough doing that.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I think at the end had about 42 years in,
Good
when we
grief.
were stood down. He was presented with an award, at our stand down parade, and it says how long he served, and it was definitely over 40 years.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, you obviously after stand down in 91, did you for a period forget about the Royal Observer Corps, or was it quite a smooth transition
Um,
from going from Royal Observer Corps to Royal Observer Corps Association?
um, it's hard to describe. There was a lot of anger,
Hmm.
um, so much so that we literally got rid of everything. The way stand down was done was not at all nice.
Did you? I mean, I
Um,
take it you were you one of the ones that either read about it in the newspaper or heard about it on the radio?
I was at work. Um, Now, back in the 80s, there wasn't very much on the TV. Um, so I always had a TV on my workbench. As you know, I was a TV engineer,
Hmm.
and I always had a TV on the workbench. And through the day, there was nothing on other than sort of CFAX or occasional open university programs or schools programs. So this was always on CFAX because back then the main transmitter, in our case at Colbeck, would often go off, especially in summer, for engineering works or whatever.
Hmm.
And the phone at work would go absolutely mad. My TV's broken. Um, I don't know what they were watching, because it wasn't like today. But yeah, the phone would go mad. But if the TV and the bench had gone off, then you could say, "Oh yeah, it's a problem with the transmitter. Don't worry about it; it'll come back on."
Hmm.
So it was just on CFAX, and I happened to glance across this day, and there on the screen it said the government announced with immediate effect the stand down of the Royal Observer Corps, and I've no qualms about it. I burst into tears. Um, it it was really a shock. Some people say, "Oh yeah, we knew it was coming," and there'd been murmurings, but you never ever thought it was going to happen, and it was a blow, a real, it knocked the breath out of you.
Yeah, I'd say it did. I mean, it was
Yeah.
quite surprising. I mean, why did they not at least let the chief observers of each post know what was happening, and then either a letter could have been passed out or a phone call could have been made? I'm still astounded that that wasn't done.
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't pleasant at all, Al.
Yeah, it's still to this day. I'm not surprised it irked so many people. You know, I take it then for a very long period of time, you you didn't even have it. You obviously had it in the back of your mind, but what was it then that brought you back into the fold, as it were?
I don't know because I went to a couple of the annual reunions, Pontins and things, and yeah, the irreverence carried on there.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was fortunate that we went to Pontins just before they pulled it down, um, because our room at Pontins was decorated with beer bottles. Um, we, Somebody pointed out that if you rubbed a beer bottle up and down in the corner of a wall, it softened the paint enough that after a few seconds it would stick there. So all around the room, all around the borders of the room were beer bottles.
Oh my goodness.
Um, yeah, when we left. Um,
There's
but
bound to be a photograph of that online somewhere. There has to be, of
I've
somebody
never
else who discovered that.
I've never seen one, but yeah, there's a photograph of Acker in the bath in the room.
We'll save that for when the stream that would prob that will pro- that would probably break the stream again. So it would
Yeah,
do. Now you've obviously become very heavily involved in the Royal Observer Corps Association and in particular with
yeah.
22 Group. Now I have a photograph of you here at the Cenotaph. Was that last year or 2 years ago?
That's 2 years ago.
Now, the next photograph or selection of photographs I'm going to put up is of your restoration of Threlkeld.
Right.
Now, you took over this. Now, this post is in a fantastic part of the country.
Thank you.
How far away from? Do you still live in Appleby or in the same area?
Not far from Upby, about 6 miles.
And how far would Threlkeld? Was it in the same cluster as your post originally?
No, it was in 50 cluster. It was 51 post. 50 cluster was Penrith, um, Bassenthwaite, and Threlkeld. We were 55 cluster, which was Colgate, Appleby, Kirby Stephen, and Bampton. Funnily
Okay.
enough, Bampton's nearly as far away. Um,
Yes, I have a
and I think,
photograph of Bampton as well. We'll put that up in a minute. But I mean, you did a lot of work with Relkeld, and the photograph I have on the screen now is of the old hatch being chiselled out. That you then had spent a considerable amount of money having that
yeah.
completely remade. Now, was there any original parts in that at all, or was that completely remade from scratch?
The actual lid and handle assembly were original. It was the channel round the outside that we had made new, and the hinge pins.
Okay, and
Um,
then the photograph I'm putting up is obviously of the sort of the unit back together again, with all the sort of the framework around it where you've
yeah,
reconcreted it in, and yeah, it's starting to look more and more like a post again, and then a photograph of you now applying some paint.
Oh yeah, spent many hours there painting and
Yes, I know what that feels like.
yeah,
And then I think the last photograph I'm going to put up is why Threlkeld was such a stunning location. And I think I think people will probably let out a gasp when they see this photograph. But yeah, the mountains in the background, absolutely stunning.
yeah, Blencathra in the background's absolutely fantastic. Um, there's a local filmmaker made a film about that mountain. Blencathra, The Life of a Mountain. It was on TV a while ago, and it's absolutely stunning. The view's fantastic. Um,
I mean,
it's just
you had a couple. I think you opened in 2000. Was it 14 or 15?
14.
14. And I mean, if you want to tell people a story, I mean, obviously, I mean, I know eventually what happened, but just for the people that are watching that don't know, if you'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, we took the post on. It was in really sorry state. The hatch lid was lying in the field. The sump was full of stones and water that people had dropped down to see what was going on. Um, the inside, there'd been a fire on the desk and graffiti everywhere. And as well as the hatch, we spent about 300 man hours, I would think, cleaning and painting and everything else. And we had an agreement with the farmer, the landowner, that we'd do this, and paid a peppercorn rent, pound a year,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, we discussed everything we were going to do with him, and yeah, he was really supportive, and yeah, had a few open days. Got people who actually lived 100 yards away didn't know it was there. Uh, Came and visited, and at these open days, we'd pass on sort of the history of the ROC, what they were there for, how it would have all worked. And we went over one day, and uh, the farmer's wife was waiting for us, and basically said that there was going to be a new lease arrangement, and the paperwork came through, for which they wanted £200 plus VAT, complaining that we didn't have sufficient insurance. Well, we had 10 million public liability, and 20 million indemnity for something else. I can't remember what, but
Mm-hmm.
Third party,
Mm-hmm.
which she said wasn't enough, because if anything happened, it might bankrupt her business and take her out. And basically, I think it was she was a bit paranoid that somebody would break the neck and it would ruin her campsite business.
Yeah.
So the terms of this lease were very, very restrictive. We
Yeah.
could only go there 4 days a year and for certain times, and we couldn't take a vehicle into the field, which the farmer had always been quite happy for us to do. And it was just it had been written just to make it unviable.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty
So we,
clear.
we, we just had to say thanks, but no thanks, and move our attentions to Brampton 37 post and
Yeah.
help.
And I have a picture of that up on the screen now.
Yeah.
And it's quite incredible that post. I mean, obviously with Threlkeld coming to an end, Brampton up happened quite, pretty much around exactly the same time, and it's in quite an interesting position that it's in someone's back garden.
Yeah, in garden of an ex-policeman.
So it's got good security anyway.
Yeah, and it's actually a long way up the garden. It's quite a trek.
Yeah,
So
he sort of bought the field behind his house and then extended the garden right the way up.
yeah, well, I think that's the way it goes. I never went there during its operational time.
Yeah, because there's sort of isn't there a pathway sort of up the sort of the side of his garden, so you don't actually have to go through his house to get to it. You can sort of make your way to the post,
Yes,
yeah,
there is. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So that at least, I mean, it would have been. I think it would have been a terrible loss if you weren't involved in some way, shape, or form with the post restoration. I obviously had followed the restoration of Threlkeld very, very diligently. I think I donated a few bits and pieces for you for the site itself,
yeah.
and it was a really, really big loss at the time. I remember seeing the sort of the update you put on the page and reading it, and just feeling a real tightening in my gut about it. That and at least thankfully you've landed back again, that you have this other post now that you can do. But I think one of the other big things you do is you help up at Dundee.
I love helping up there. Yeah,
you would go there quite a bit, and you've sort of become the sort of the go-to guy to fix the sort of the radio equipment, and the teletalks is a big thing you've done now, obviously, with hopefully talking to Mike in the next week or so. You've been able to sort of, people can send you their broken equipment and you can hopefully fix it. You were able to source new microphones for the teletalks, things like that there. I mean, I haven't been up to Dundee myself in at least, I think, 4 years. Incredibly, it doesn't feel that long, but it is actually that long. Yeah, it's so annoying seeing the photographs and knowing that it's just there and I can do it. I think now with Logan Air being able to fly now from Belfast to Dundee directly, I should be able to go back and do that now. I will definitely be doing that next year. But I mean, in terms of the things you do up in Dundee, you pretty much go there for nearly every work weekend, don't you?
I try to. Yeah, there's always something for me to do up there, and I think
the photograph on the screen, I believe, is you. I think it's either you working on an old printer or working on an old keyboard of some description.
Probably a teleprinter.
Yeah. But I think you have this little corner down in the original sort of the telex room. When I go down there, my frequent travels, traveling somewhere, I always seem to do painting. Every time I go there, that's something I always seem to end up doing. I always see you in your little corner, surrounded by your oscilloscopes and multimeters and everything, your soldering iron, and that's sort of you for the whole weekend. The only time I see you is sort of breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, we've been making good progress. There's another lad, Pete. Pete and Andy, they helping with the electronics as well, and we've all got slightly different skill sets, so it goes together. But it's strange being the only ex-ROC member of the restoration team there.
Yeah, full time, and obviously, Cheryl would get up as much as she can.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do love going over there, and it again, you do, as I said to Gavin last week, you do see that whole camaraderie. It just, we mightn't all see each other for a period of time, but we do still keep in contact. We're always talking to each other. We're always communicating via Facebook and and messages and things like that there. And when we all get back together again, it's as if we only were talking to each other a couple of days ago. That's what I love about Dundee. And again, as I said to Gavin, it's brought everybody back together, and there is a whole big community spirit around it.
I've just realised I'm going to get a serious slapping because that was the case originally, but now, of course, there's Bob McIntosh and Wendy, who are ex-ROC and on the team as well.
Yes, Bob has been going up quite a bit now. I'm hoping I'm going to have Bob on at some point as well, because I think Bob would be I've so many interviews lined up with people. And just to let you know, your face is now back on the screen, just in case. But yeah, I think we've been on now. That's been an hour. Amazingly, we've actually been talking for. So yeah, I think we'll start to wind it up now. But listen, thank you very, very much for coming on.
It's no problem at all. I'm sorry about the technical issues earlier.
Listen, I think a lot of it was my end. I think a lot of it was my end too. I was trying different things. I was trying to actually find. I realized I didn't have an internal photograph of Threlkeld, and I tried to bring up an internal photograph of Threlkeld, and I believe that might have frozen everything. So you live and learn. We're 3 episodes in. It could be worse. The whole place could be on fire. So it's yeah. But listen, again, thank you very, very much. It's always great to get an insight of somebody who was actually there. You served on a post. I'm really someone who is, has come along and has tried to emulate things as best I can about the way you have them. I don't think I'll ever get ported down the way you had it. I don't think I'll have a microwave, a computer, a TV, and all of those things. I do have a generator and I can do a few things, but I think having a microwave down there is probably just pushing it a little bit.
Well, James Crofts at Broadway Tower's got a microwave down the post.
Yes, he did that as a bit of a sort of a callback for you, didn't he?
He did, yeah, because he's actually got that picture with Joe loading his pie into the microwave there to show people that it actually did happen. And I mentioned Carol, Joe's daughter, that I was at school with. She actually visited because she doesn't live far away. Mm-hmm. And I got a message from James that one of his visitors had looked at this photograph and said, "That's my dad."
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. That's really good.
Yeah.
I love that. No, I think that's one of the reasons why I did port it down was to have it, that when people came down into the post that hadn't been there, either had served in the Royal Observer Corps or a member of their family had served in the Royal Observer Corps, and they came down and they saw it and they're just like, good grief, it's like stepping back into a time capsule. And I think most of the poster stores, I think that's what they try to do, is they try to have it exactly as it was. And nothing fancy, just exactly, and tell the story right. Yeah. You can definitely over embellish it, and I know a lot of museums do over embellish things, but you do have to tell the story, and you do have to tell the story right, because the Royal Observer Corps story has to be told. It's an organization that ran from right after the First World War right through until the collapse of communism and the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War. And it's amazing that even back in 2008, 2009, when I first started getting involved, there was so little online about the Royal Observer Corps. I even looking back now, it still boggles my mind. Yeah, sorry, I've got company here. The dog's sat next to me now. Oh, well, that's always brownie points. You can let him jump up if you want to. It's always. Oh, apparently on YouTube you get more views on YouTube and things if there's an animal in the video. That's why I grew this beard, you see. A nest for something. Yeah. Well, you should. Yeah. Don't be with me when I'm eating. When I'm out for a meal, don't sit beside me. Listen, David, thank you very much again, and you're welcome. As always, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And I think people are saying in the comments as well, they could sit and listen for another hour for us to talk. But I think I'll have you on again at some point. I'm going to try to work out a way of having sort of a roundtable discussion. So maybe bringing a couple of former observers on and having a few people. So I'm going to work out how to do that, and I will get back to you on that. But listen, thank you very, very much again. You're welcome, Al, and I hope I haven't bored everybody. Oh no, judging by the comments, you definitely haven't. But listen, I will give you a quick phone afterwards, just to do a sit rep. Yeah, no problem at all. Okay, mate. Listen, I'll speak to you again soon. Yeah, take care. Okay, you too, mate. Everybody stay safe from this damn virus. Yes, exactly. We're still. It's not as safe as everybody's marking out. We're still in the middle of it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, mate. Listen, thank you very much again. I'll speak to you soon. Cheers, everybody. Cheers, David. Bye-bye. And I will turn David off there. Okay, folks, that was David Shaw from Carlisle 22 Group ROC. And listen, I really enjoyed that interview. Going by the comments, I'm pretty sure you all enjoyed it as well. Sorry for the little bizarre technical difficulties we had there. It was, I think most of it was my end. So I will make sure, I think I'm streaming in high definition, even though Facebook probably isn't even showing this in high definition. So I will work on that in the prevailing weeks, and hopefully we'll get that corrected. My next guest, as I said, will be Mike Scott. Again, from 28 Group Dundee. He is a bit of a technical whiz, and he has got the communication system all working again and the warning system all working again. So he actually messaged me while I was having the technical difficulties just to say that he's not available next week. So I'll either I don't want to do a rushed interview with somebody that get them in unprepared. So I'll either take a break for a week and we'll come back in 2 weeks' time with Mike, or I'll see if I can get somebody in. But as I say, I don't want to get somebody in as a rush job and it'll just seem rushed that way. But listen, folks, as always, thank you very, very much for watching, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye-bye.